Hello and welcome to another installment of Liberty Nation Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Ellen's economics correspondent. Each week, I dive into the mores of top economic news stories and fish on compelling narratives or arbitrary fallacies that have been accepted as conventional wisdom by the swamp creatures for years. This week, what happened to the Federal Reserve's tightening? All the focus has been on the U.S. Central Bank's moves on interest rates. After a red-hot June Consumer Price Index report, the market is increasingly betting that the Eccles Building will pull the trigger on a 100 basis point rate hike at the July Federal Open Market Committee policy meeting. Fed officials have been apprehensive about moving ahead with a full point increase, arguing that the Fed is already being aggressive enough. But while the financial investors are concentrating on the benchmark Fed funds rate, they are missing out on what is happening to the balance sheet. This past spring, the central bank unveiled plans of unwinding its $8.9 trillion balance sheet that includes removing $60 billion in Treasury securities per month from the books and also $35 billion in agency debt and agency mortgage-backed securities a month. The balance sheet had been on a steady decline since the middle of June. However, something happened in the week ending July 11th. The balance sheet increased approximately $4 billion. It is unclear what happened right now, and not too many people have addressed it since the data were published. Whatever the case may be, it is still clear that the Fed's quantitative tightening cycle is a joke. Indeed, considering the broader trends, the central bank is still maintaining an accommodative policy. First, with the inflation rate north of 9% and the Fed funds rate still below 3%, the real interest rate is still negative. Plus, imagine what would happen to the economy if real interest rates were in positive territory. Second, adding to the balance sheet when it should be falling is certainly stealth stimulus. This fact was noted by St. Louis Fed Bank President James Bullard, who noted this past spring that monetary policy had remained extremely accommodative. Indeed, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, and his merry men and women of the Eccles Building are frightened of taking an even more hawkish approach to resolving inflation. If price stability is the institution's chief objective, then it would have no reservations about raising rates by at least 100 basis points. But the central bank wants to have its cake and eat it too. On the one hand, Powell will argue that the Fed will navigate a soft landing, supporting economic growth, keeping unemployment low, and raising rates. On the other, Powell has repeatedly insisted that price stability is the Fed's number one job right now. Perhaps the Fed is hoping through a new report from central bank staff that concluded the balance sheet runoff could damage the U.S. Treasury market. According to the paper, authored by researchers at the Atlanta and Kansas City Fed regional banks, the Fed's efforts could accelerate the effect of the reductions on financial markets and hiking rates more than expected. Ultimately, market analysts have noticed a connection between the Fed's tightening and recent strains in the bond market. Piper Sandler analysts Roberto Perli and Benson Durham wrote last week in a research note, quote, "Poor liquidity conditions no doubt exacerbate the already existing volatility. They might also include the Fed, which cares deeply about the Treasury market functioning, to stop QT sooner than it thinks at the moment." It has been chaotic for the Fed as of late, with already talk of the central bank cutting interest rates before the cycle is even over in 2023 or 2024. Once again, it is evident that the market is so focused on the Federal Reserve and what it does, rather than the fundamentals of the equities arena and the broader economy. This has been the common theme amplified since the early days of the COVID-19 public health crisis. Investors need the Fed, be it for the next fix or the next bailout. It is comparable to the Fred McMurray line from Double Indemnity, quote, "And right then it came over me that I hadn't walked out on anything at all, that the hope was too strong, that this wasn't the end between her and me. It was only the beginning." That's it for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column on LibertyNation.com, where I discuss recession, personal savings, and the dollar-euro parity. Also, be sure to check out my special editions of Swamponomics TV, where I interview media personality Carol Roth, economist Daniel Mitchell, and former Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul. Thank you.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
daily tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I can
others.
do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.